Welcome everyone. Today finds me in Coloma, California. And as you can see, I am at the Marshall Gold Discovery Park. This is a location of the famous Sutter's Mill, where in 1848, John Marshall first discovered gold in California that set off the gold rush of 1849. Never been here before, so let's take a look around. The first thing we see is kind of an old-fashioned gold rush town here. In 1850, there were over 70 buildings in just 1/4 length of road. 20 years later, almost nothing was left. All the gold had been removed from the ground, and what was left was leased to Chinese miners who tore down the buildings to try to find the gold that was underneath them. So we don't have a lot of original buildings here any longer. Although we refer to this as a gold rush of 1849, according to this quote by John Sutter, the people commenced rushing up from San Francisco and other parts of California in May of 1848.
There's gold in them there hills.
And it says right here where I'm standing is where James Marshall first found gold. Less than an ounce, but it started the gold rush of 1849. Since the original buildings are long gone, back in the 1860s, 1870s, they didn't really think about preserving history. Everything we're going to look at are largely recreations. Once more easily found gold was exhausted, they started digging. And this is what one of the openings of the gold mine shafts looked like. Of course, this one doesn't go down very deep. Only 10 feet or so. Look at these guys all hoping to strike it rich. And there they are at the entrance to one of the gold mines. And here's a display talking about placer mining. Placer mining is when they try to get the gold out of the river by doing things like panning for gold or using sluice boxes. Didn't cost much to do it this way, and you could sometimes find gold. This is an example of a miner's cabin, although many of the miners just lived in tent cities. Let's take a peek inside. And look at that, way in the back, there are boxes of rocks. I don't know if you can see those. We have some of their eating utensils. Look at that, there's a little scale. I guess if you're pretty ambitious, you got some of that gold dust or gold flecks, you could weigh it on the spot. This is actually really interesting construction. Just like real life Lincoln logs. This is called a chili mill because it originated in places like Chile, Peru, and Mexico. And the whole point is to crush the stones with those big wheels in order to find the gold. And these are some of the actual wheels from a chili mill. And to give you an idea how big they are, here's my hand. So I'm going to guess these things are probably about 5 feet across and maybe a couple of feet thick. Those are some big, heavy wheels. This is another device called an arister. They would hook the horses or the mules up to this, and it would rotate around, and inside here, there were stones that would crush the rock, and that rock could then be used to pan through it to find the gold. And this was hydraulic mining. What they would do is run water through this giant gun, and they would aim it at the hillsides, and they would wash all of the rock and sediment down into sluice pans, and that's how they would gather the gold. They thought of everything. They really wanted to get every last ounce of gold they possibly could. And I would say this is probably about 8 feet long. Let's look down it. I would imagine those are some of the pipes that were used to direct the water into these guns. And there you can see a picture of it actually being used. And this is a result on the landscape. Here's another part of one of those old guns. You can see how they directed the water with those fins. Wow, will you look at this? Holy cow. And this is called a stamp mill. And what would happen is that wheel would be hooked up to a belt probably powered by water. You can see as that wheel turned, all of these cams would push those pistons up and down at different times. And as it turned, these heavy stamps would move up and down, and they would crush all the rock that passed through. Man, I would love to see this thing in operation. It must have been quite a sight. And this particular one is from San Francisco. Very impressive indeed. This is probably one of the simplest ways. It's called a sapling mill. They would hang a rock from the sapling and spring it up and down. And you can see what that looked like in this picture. And here's the second stamp mill. These things are about 15 feet tall. And you can see once again, it has the wheel that would spin around, and those cams would push the rods up and down. And come all the way through here. And that's where the rock would get crushed. And it appears that this is where all the rock would be fed in to get crushed. So this is probably the back end as it came out, and then they would process that to find the gold. And it looks like this was made right here, Sutter Creek Foundry. Earth moves, water flows. It makes me wonder if there's still gold around here somewhere. I mean, there's probably not enough to make it worthwhile, but it would sure be fun to find a little gold, wouldn't it? And this sign identifies it as Winter's Hotel. I've stayed in my share of questionable hotels in my day. Nothing like this. And after the primary mining took place, Chinese miners moved in to collect up all the remnants. It sounds like they were very industrious and hardworking, and they pretty much cleared out any leftover gold. And it says this is the store of Wah Hop. I don't know if this is the actual store of Wah Hop or it's a reproduction. According to the plaque, it just says, standing next to you is the store of Wah Hop. I stand corrected. The type of buildings was called a Manly building and a Wah Hop building. I don't know what designates one from the other, but apparently what we're looking at are the Manly and Wah Hop style stores. And it was these types of stores where the Chinese got their mining supplies. In 1883, there was a fire that destroyed most of the Coloma community. And after the fire, almost all of the Chinese residents left the area. It is some beautiful land around here. There's gold in them there hills. That was the cry in 1849. Here it explains what happened. James Marshall arrived in the Coloma Valley, home of the Nisanan, those were the Indian people, on May 18, 1847 to map the site for a sawmill he was to build in partnership with John Sutter. That's the world-famous Sutter Mill. On Monday morning, January 24th, 1848, Marshall picked up a flake of pure gold. He said, "It made my heart thump, for I was certain it was gold." The valley, the lives of Marshall and the Nisanan, and the land called California were forever changed. Kind of hard to believe that this is where it all started. Sutter's Mill. It says this rock monument marks the site of John A. Sutter's sawmill. They would pan for gold in these waters. And what we see here are the remnants, or a reproduction, of part of John Sutter's mill. If I could have been here 170 years ago, I'd be rich. Well, that's it from Sutter's Mill. I hope you enjoyed our visit. As always, I encourage you to leave your comments down below. Please like and share the videos, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and ring that bell icon so you know when I post new videos. And if you care to, think about becoming a Patreon sponsor, where $3 sponsors will get postcards from me from the interesting places I visit, like Sutter's Mill. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I'm Mark from the Average Me channel.